time to do some launch review. So in my last YouTube video, I gave you a behind the scenes look at the mindset and kind of mental and emotional side to launching. And as promised, I'm now coming in with this video to talk about the practical. I don't know about you, but it was actually this time last year when I was doing my very first launch, my biggest question marks were about the practical. It was, what should my timelines be? How do I do a content plan? How do I actually sell it? What's my to-do list? What do I need to get done? So hopefully this video, if you're in that place, is going to help to answer some of your questions. I'm going to talk about the timeline that I had in place for my last launch, the content plan and how I actually sold it, and then finally the numbers. I'll be telling you everything from how much we spent on Facebook ads to what the conversion rate was from the challenge to the paid program to the most important, or maybe not most important, but I would say most interesting figures of what the revenue and also more importantly, what the profit was. So let's kick off by looking at the timelines. I have got some notes in front of me because otherwise I would be all over the place. And honestly, it's the same when it comes to a timeline. I am not a massively organized person naturally. If you saw my personal life, you would know that. For me, organization is done out of need, not desire. And that is more true than ever with launching. I'm usually pretty spontaneous with stuff. I don't really plan my content in advance. I like to just take things as they come. But launching is the one time where I really get everything down on a timeline and into a plan because it is just so full on. And the more that you can be prepped and ready, the easier it's going to be to then walk through and actually do the stuff. So timelines are something that massively differ per launch. And for me, it's a bit of a rule of thumb where the bigger the thing is that I'm selling, the more time it takes to take it from idea to launch. That's both because there's often more moving parts. For example, organizing a retreat takes months of work, organizing a workshop takes hours or days of work. And also because when you're thinking about the time that you want to spend selling it, I would say the more that people are investing, aka the bigger the thing is that you're selling, the more time you need to give it within launch to do that selling and create content which is gonna get them in. So timelines do massively vary, but if I'm taking this last launch, which was of a 6-week group program as an example, we first started talking about this around June and July. I don't plan years in advance in my business, but I like to be a quarter or two ahead in terms of knowing, the main things that are coming. So because these 6-week programs are such a big job, it takes 6 weeks out of my schedule, it takes a lot to launch, which I'm going to tell you more about. We kind of knew this was coming around spring of this year, but it really wasn't until June and July where we started to put some plans in place. Up until that point, we just said, hey, we know this is happening in autumn. And then towards the end of July, we really put the skeleton of a timeline in place of, okay, here's when we're going to do the challenge. Here's how we want to launch it. So therefore, here's the fact that we're doing a challenge. Here's when it's going to go on sale. Here's we're going to start delivering it. Here's a rough outline of everything that's going to need to get done so that then when it gets to the creating part, that plan is already in place. Something to note with this timeline is that I took August off in my business and so did my team. So we were prepping everything for the end of July so that when we came back at the start of September and launch was just around the corner, we'd already laid a bit of the foundation. Now, typically I'm quite a last minute person, and that's for me mainly just because my time is stretched in so many different places that until something is really urgent, I don't really need to be doing it because there's often a more urgent thing to do. However, when it came to this particular launch, that was a little bit different because for the first time ever, I did Facebook ads, which I'll talk a bit more about in the rest of this video. And what that meant is that I needed to get the assets done, which is, your sales page, your copy, your graphics, your images, all of that good stuff earlier so that the Facebook ad guy could do whatever the Facebook ad guy does and put like pixels and whatever else it is on it. So usually I wouldn't have done that stuff until the very start of September, but I did that at the end of July so that he would have it. But typically I would do that a little bit later. And then when we came back in September, it was all systems go. We took that skeleton plan. We actually had a team retreat the first week of September. So we had a big old meeting that week and we really just fleshed it out. We went, okay, we're doing the challenge this week. Let's plan everything within that. Okay, we're going to sell it this week. Let's think about all the content that's doing it. Okay, we've got team leaders. Now let's make sure that everything is ready for them to do their job. That for me was the next stage where it was really bringing things to life. And then from that point, it was about 2 weeks on. We then started promoting the free challenge on the 8th of September. The free challenge then ran from the 21st to the 15th of September. That's not right. the 21st to the 25th of September. And then we were launching from the 25th of September to the 2nd of October, which I will mention is a week shorter than I was planning. So all in all, there were 4 weeks of launching, from promoting the challenge, hosting the challenge, to then selling the thing. It was 4 weeks. And like I said, that was meant to be 5. So lots of steps before you even get to that point. But for me, it's kind of a 4 to 5 week period for a program like this to bring the thing to life and actually do the launch. And if you're interested in more of this timeline chat, if you want to know more about each of the stages that I go through, from having the very initial crumb of an idea to bringing it to life, I've actually got a past video which is all about that. So if you want to know more about the 5 stages that I go through from idea to launch, I will link that video down in the description and you can go and nerd out on all of the timeline chat there. But that for me, for this program, like I said, different for all of them, is what the timeline looked like. So then having a look at the content, which as a digital marketing coach, like, this is the bit I love. This is what I nerd out on. I genuinely adore. I get so excited about coaching clients through a launch because I just find it such a fun thing to do. However, I completely appreciate if marketing isn't your thing, the marketing side of launching can be really intimidating. But I really believe when it comes to selling something, it is just about being super repetitive and really raising your energy and excitement with the way that you share in selling. I see it that there are 3 stages to the content side of the launch. You have pre, you have during, and you have post. Now, this is something that I could talk about for hours, so I'm going to give you a quick overview. But pre is about really laying the foundations for it, getting people excited, building the hype, getting people familiar with the fact that something's coming. During is where you're actually selling it, you know, doors are open, tickets are live, whatever the case is. And that's where you're doing all of the education around what it is, who it's for, how it works, why it's great. And that's where you want to get super repetitive and super consistent with your message. And then post-launch is once doors are closed or you've run out of tickets, whatever it may be. And then you're creating some content to almost kind of wind people down from the launch and give people evidence of the thing that you sold. So it almost becomes this full story of like beginning, middle where you're selling it, and then the end where you wrap it all up with a nice bow. So knowing that there are then those 3 stages to launch, and I've lined that up with the timeline that I have in place, it's then about looking at all of the places that I show up online and really just thinking about how they're all going to be utilized in their own ways. So for example, I think about how the podcast episodes are going to link in with the topic of the thing that I'm selling. I will consider how my YouTube videos can maybe lay the foundation and get people familiar to my expertise in that certain area. I'll look at how my Instagram stories can give people all the basic info and get people excited to join. I'll look at how I use Instagram lives and my grid and reels and all of the different elements that I have at my fingertips to facilitate each of those 3 stages. The really important thing about launching is to be repetitive and consistent. And that is why having a content plan in place is so important. Even if, like me, you're typically not a content planner, get ahead of yourself, get that plan in place, and you'll make it so much easier for yourself to keep showing up, because as you saw from the last video, launching really can challenge your brain. So by having a plan in place, you just get one step ahead and you make sure that you're still being consistent. The framework that I use for my online presence when I'm launching is that I have a sales page on my website, and then I use all the other elements, podcast, email, Instagram, you know the drill, to then point people towards it. You know, it's that sales page that causes people to take action. That's where you buy, that's where you book, that's where you inquire. So that for me is that central point. And then all of the other content exists to connect, to serve, to build interest, to create energy, but ultimately to get people to that middle point. If this like marketing nerdy chat is something that you are interested in, I do have a course launching, I think, bear with me if it's not, but I think at the start of 2021, which is going to be all about launching. I'm actually doing it in collaboration with a mindset coach. So they're going to bring the mindset, I'll bring the practical. So I will leave a link below if you want to join the waitlist for that and be the first to know when it comes out. It'll basically be a full run through of all of the stuff you need to know about launching your, whatever it may be, program, course, workshop, retreat, package, service, whatever it is, in a way that feels easy on your side. And I say easy knowing that launching would never be described as that, but in the most easy way possible, following that framework that I have just ran you through. Now, when it came to this specific launch that I've just done, I had two new elements that I was playing around with. Number one was Facebook ads, and number two was a free challenge. Now, I've not previously kind of dabbled my toe in either of these before because I've always been worried about how to do it in a way that still matches with my values. I am like through and through a value-driven business, and I will never do something if I feel like it is, I guess, sacrificing on the values that are so important to me. And I don't mean this as a negative to anyone that uses these things. I mean, now I'm that person. But previously, when I'd seen people using challenges or Facebook ads, it never sat right with me, and I couldn't really see how I would use it in my way with my values. But the more that I explored it, the more conversations that I had with people, the more I thought, hey, people are doing these things for a reason. Let's just see if they can work. And whilst it took a little bit of figuring out, honestly, now that I'm post-launch, I can look back at those two things we used and say that they were so effective and, in my opinion, so value-driven, which, as I said, is the most important thing to me. I was working with a Facebook ads manager who really got my vision, understood what I didn't want my ads to feel like, and therefore could help me to create ads that felt the opposite of that. And when it came to the challenge for me, I was full on in, nothing is too much to give away for free mode. I packed it with all of the content that I could. I didn't hold anything back, and I really don't regret that, because the biggest thing that we had people comment on when we asked them why they joined the paid program was the challenge. And it's interesting to notice, actually, especially with the Facebook ads, those seem to be most effective in getting the people who were on the kind of outer edge of my audience into the challenge, as opposed to marketing to people who were totally cold. We got an amazing conversion rate on the Facebook ads, which I'll talk more about in a second, but I would definitely use both of those elements again. Of course, I learned a lot about them and I would do things slightly differently next time, but all round, I'm so glad that I kind of took the risk, trusted the fact that there must be something good about these things if everyone's using them, and figured out a way of doing them that works for me, because they just feel like amazing tools to now use with future launches. I would say one thing about the Facebook ads is I wouldn't encourage you to add Facebook ads into a launch that you don't already know works on an organic level. Facebook ads are not going to sell your thing, but they can play a role in having more eyes on it. So I would recommend, and this is the way that I've done it, do 1 or 2 launches without paid ads. Figure out the organic side first, and then when you add paid ads in, it almost acts as this like steroid boost where the machine is working, so you're then just using the paid ads to put more people into it. So that's the content side of launching. Like I said, I could talk about that for hours, but I'll let you join the waitlist below if you want to know more about the course on that. So let's have a look at numbers, which for a little bit of a nerd like me is arguably the most interesting thing. So starting off with the numbers that you really want to know, which is revenue and profit, we ended up selling 80 spaces to my paid program, which was at £295. We did also have 10 spaces also sell, which was scholarship pay-as-you-can places, but I've not included the revenue from those in these numbers. So 80 full price spaces at £295 made £23,600 revenue. I keep saying revenue because it grinds my gears to see these people shouting about 10K months and 20K launches and not showing you what really goes into that. Because if we take that figure, number one, we need to take off tax, which was just under £5,000. Then we need to take off the cost for team, which was Facebook ads management and video editing, which was just under £1,200. Then we need to take off what I spent on Facebook ads, which was just over £650. Then we need to take off the amount that I pay the team leaders who host accountability teams within the program. Like, those are just my obvious cost. We're not including the random costs that are also incurred within that. We land on a profit for this launch. So from 23,600 revenue to a profit of £14,536.37. So of course, still an incredible number that I'm so proud of, but very different to that full revenue figure, which is often what we get shown. So that's the numbers in terms of money. And then having a look at the challenge numbers and how kind of people opted in via Facebook ads, we had 763 people opt into the challenge. So they went to the landing page, put in their email address, clicked yes. We then had 548 of them join the Facebook group. So over 200 people joined, but never actually took part. So that's interesting to note. And of those 763 who opted in, 365 were from the Facebook ads. So we ended up getting a kind of cost per challenge member of £1.65, which I'm told is a really good number. I've got no flipping clue. So it cost us £1.65 times 365 people, which is where you land on the cost of £653.63 for the Facebook ads. And then from the challenge, we had 68 people sign up. So 68 out of the 80 were from the challenge, and that leads us to a conversion rate of 12%. I don't really like looking at industry averages because I find they're often for businesses that look quite different to mine, and I sometimes like to hold myself to a higher level than the average. But for me, that's something that I'm happy with. When I went into this launch, because there were so many new elements in there, particularly the challenge and the Facebook ads, I was just going in thinking whatever we learn, that is a positive. I don't know how this is gonna work. I don't know if this is gonna work. Thankfully it did. But hey, whatever happens, we get to learn from it. And I'm really pleased with those numbers and really excited to see how we can kind of grow and now use that data moving forward when we do future launches. So that is like a run through of all the practical stuff that sits within launching. If you are curious to know more about the timeline and the stages to launch, I will link that video below. If you want to know more about the Facebook ads, I'm doing a podcast episode very soon with my ads manager, so you'll finally get to meet them and I'll ask them all the questions. So make sure you're subscribed to starting the conversation for that. And finally, if you do want to know more about that launching course, which is launching in January, then I'll leave a link to the waitlist below. But if you do have any other questions about launching, pop them in the comments. I'll be really happy to answer. I love chatting about launch. I really nerd out on it. And as you hopefully seen from this video, I will share anything if it's going to be helpful. So let me know any of your questions. Make sure you're subscribed for the next video and I'll see you there.